Terrarian in the Dungeon, Chapter 2, Fan Fiction by Azazyel. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel for listening and patreon.com/Azazyel to read all of his stories. Watching Seshat work was to put simply a work of art in of itself. Every motion that carved a piece of wood off was as smooth and natural as a river brook's gurgling water in the spring. To engrave or work with wood is to be as natural as the wood itself. Just as you do not fight the tide, you carve and cut along with the grain of the wood. Sesha spoke softly as she followed the directions I gave to make the wooden bench I needed to make for myself. This is a lovely bench, plenty solid and all. But there is nothing supernatural about it. She wondered as she played with the hip-sized bench she made, and I nodded at her words, but then armed with watching her make it I took the very tools she used to make the bench and began the same process. Follow the grain. She would yell at me repeatedly. You're pushing that chisel like you're a woman trying to give birth, just relax. Yeah, although the way she taught me left much to be desired in the end, all her pointed out mistakes were things I could improve on. So, after failing my attempt under her supervision with her wood and making a basically indestructible lopsided table as the legs weren't equal in height, I decided to get back at Seshat. Alright, try to break or harm the table, I said, pointing at the table that with each movement would have its feet clatter and the table would wobble with its legs being not uniform in length. What? No, just take the top off and sand down the left leg so it matches the damn size it needs to be. Seshat yelled at me, and I smiled wryly, and then with a mighty crashing noise I brought down a wood chopping axe used to chop wood to feed her furnaces, and the axe merely bounced off the table making my hands go numb. What? Seshat was completely speechless as she saw me utterly smash the axe on the table, yet whereas the axe should have exploded into pieces, this one merely shook in place and not a damn thing happened to it, no scratches, no gouges, nothing. Go ahead. Oh, great goddess. See the bad side of my bullshit skill and its only fault. I have to damn near perfectly make anything I want. Otherwise, it's worthless, and just as a bonus everything I make is already fucking basically got the Durandal enchantment and is indestructible, so it's a pain in the axe to break down. I cursed, making my goddess look at me like I was an alien. Wait, I actually was an alien. Are you using mine for this? She asked as she took out some tools and began to attempt to take samples from the table and even use some kind of magical laser thing that was probably to laser etch things, but nope, nothing worked. She couldn't get a splinter off of it. Nope. I said cheerfully, even though I did in fact wish it did use mine so I could train my magic while using it. I have to break it down with my own indestructible tools in order to get back only some of the materials, I explained as I took my copper axe out of my inventory. The sight of the tool made her eyes twitch at me, having a sort of dimensional storage, as such a thing hadn't really been seen here in Ontario. Yeah. That little disappearing trick is something. She muttered before shaking her head. Don't let other people see that or you will end up disappearing just as quickly or face something worse. She warned, and I nodded. After showing her how my copper axe could break down the wooden bench, she attempted to do the same with some of the pieces, and thankfully she could actually damage it, but when I had her smash the very axe on the copper short sword and pickaxe I had, no damage was done to any of the freely given items. So, you can only break that which isn't properly created, to begin with. She mused with her leopard tail swishing through the air in interest as we worked out my skill's secrets. In that case, sit here on my stool. I am going to guide your every move to see the true scope of your skill. She said, and then I was moved to sit on a long bench of a stool so she could literally sit behind me and wrap her arms and hands around my own hands so she could control my every move. Relax. I am merely your teacher in this, so keep your mind clear of my beauty, hee. She teased me, and the reminder helped clear my head of the feeling of her literally divine body being practically draped over mine. It turns out, however, that my cheat was completely heartless, and with Sesha, a literal goddess of architecture, guiding my hands, we were finally able to create the workbench successfully. I felt at the moment of its completion, my mental library of crafting recipes expanded greatly with the wood and odd ends in my inventory. I can't carve it anymore, is it done? She asked, and I nodded as I went over all the stuff I could make, and then I remembered the starter bag hanging in the corner of my inventory. Yup, I got a lot more info downloaded into my head about stuff I can build, but first let me try this, I said as I mentally focused on the starter bag Calamity gave me, and from the bag burst out into my inventory was a full setup of several potions, but I knew that the mining, spelunker, shine, and gills potions weren't of all too much use, whereas the recall potion, however, was a game changer. Drinking it would teleport me to the last place I laid down and relaxed in, and with that last point being here, I had an excellent way to escape a bad situation should I get the star-shaped potion into my hands and drink it before I got hurt. But other than the potions I was given a better sword than my copper short sword, copper broadsword, and even a copper short bow and 100 arrows to go with it. Lastly were the far more interesting items to me in the topaz staff and the squirrel squire staff, along with a mana crystal that would supposedly enhance my mind should I break it in my hands, which was the smartest thing to do now before I went into the dungeon. That's condensed astral mana. What are you going to do with that? She asked, and I smiled, as her tail froze and went ramrod straight as I crushed the crystal in my hand with the blue mana filling my body, and with a hum, I felt it congregating in my head before the weird feeling dissipated, leaving me with the irate goddess who was yelling about how stupid I was to use astral mana as a mortal when supposedly only deities could handle it when they traveled from Tenkai and Genkai. This isn't raw astral mana as you say though. At the very least it's highly refined, and it was literally given to me by my skill so it wouldn't hurt me, I said, and she couldn't gainsay me with how I spoke only the truth. Ah! My child is a cheating cheat, she yelled, acting childishly as she waved her arms up and around, having a small tantrum. So should I get into the magic staff that can instantly shoot a single prepared spell and the staff that can summon a magical squire that will fight for me? I asked, grinning as Sesha literally just threw up her hands in the universal constant of saying, fuck it, go ahead. Fine, go ahead Jake, show me all your goodies. I can tell you are getting even more out of my reactions than being happy with the gear itself, she said, rolling her eyes, making me chuckle at figuring out as I truly wasn't all too attached to this stuff, as I would probably be quickly replacing it, to be honest. The first thing I was going to do once I got an anvil was make a full set of metal armor, all new weapons, and even a new summon item that only required some wood, snow, ice, and a flower that grows in a tundra area. So yeah, I wasn't all too attached to this stuff honestly. Well, now what are your plans, Jake? Seshat asked me, and I bit my lip as I held onto my copper broadsword before I dismissed it into my inventory. Well, I need dungeon drops for materials to use in special weapons and a lot of other stuff. I mused as I went over the crafting recipes and noted how certain items that most certainly weren't going to be in Danmachi, like the robotic wolfram stuff, could be crafted using only some iron and copper stuff, whereas in the game I would need to kill the wolfram mobs in order to get the items that I would need. Now, why did I want wolfram stuff in particular? Well, besides giving some decent armor, it also allowed me to summon the weakest boss in the game, which I felt even as a level 1 I could have a fantastic chance against once I get a grappling hook or something that will allow me to maneuver around. You can't stay here. Where you are safe? She asked me, and I tore my consciousness out of my mental plans to look at the somber and, if anything, sad goddess, as she continued, seeing as I was now focused on her. No one says that you must go to the dungeon in order to level up or even get status points for your fauna. You must merely do things that would impress a god back in Tenkai who could be watching you. Seshat, I need to grow stronger, and hiding here won't help me even if I could actually grow stronger by crafting some of the low-level debris I can now. Besides, as you just asked earlier, I am perfectly capable of creating floor bosses basically, and even taming the monsters I summon in the future. Thinking of the female elementals I could summon in post-hard mode after I kill the wall of flesh, well, to be frank, I was very excited about such an opportunity. Yes, a mortal will seek to temper themselves in the furnace of battle. But not being able to see your fate and future makes me feel antsy, I suppose. Sesha explained weakly, and I nodded in understanding, and then, to cheer her up, I decided to use my familiar privilege to give my goddess so head scratches.